Costs and lots of plans back to back. Well, we don't want the holidays to break the bank. No, we don't. That's why finance expert and founder of Crush Your Money Goals, Bernadette Joy, is here to help us navigate our holiday spending. Bernadette, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me.
Look, I love having you here because you always, refresh my memory of little tips and tricks that we need to have to save a buck or two. It's so hard.
It's so hard.
Especially during the holidays because, you love people. You want to show that you love. You want to show that you care, but you also got to be smart about it. So what are the 4 tips that you would give people? Number one, when it has to do with being really realistic about what's going on.
Just like you said, right, is that a lot of us like to love on people with our money and gifts and stuff, but be realistic of where you are right now. And specifically, a lot of people don't like the word budget. And so instead I said, I want people to think about setting a goal for this holiday. So instead of saying, oh, I have to stick to a budget for the holiday, say, I have the joy and pleasure of having a goal of spending this much money on this many people. So if you say, okay, my goal is $500, doesn't that feel different than saying I have a budget of $500?
Yeah.
And so when you say, okay, I have a goal of $500, then what's the best way to spend that $500? Is it 10 people at $50, right? Or is it 50 people at $10? Setting that goal helps you really prioritize who you want to spend on.
Ta-da! If you like this content, please go ahead and check out my latest project. It's the Crush Your Money Goals book, and it will be available for purchase December, but now you can get it for pre-order and you can learn the 25 money habits that will help you save, invest, and plan for financial freedom the same way that I did and was able to retire by 40. Check it out at crushyourmoneygoals.com.
It's really changing your mindset, if you will, of how you're budgeting. But everybody, like you mentioned, everybody hates that word, budgeting. How about this one? Look, we just talked about inflation and how it's ticked up a little bit during this time. What are some inflation-busting ideas?
So I'm here to say, I don't know if you've noticed this, but have you noticed that everything retro is back in right now?
Oh, yes, yeah.
Yes.
Little jackets, clothing, hats.
All the stuff that we were wearing as kids is like back in style now, right? Here's the great news. You can use that trend to our advantage and beat inflation by looking at some of the things that we already have and maybe having a spin on them, right? So for example, I had a client who took all these old t-shirts of her kids and she turned them into a quilt, right? Like that's a nice gift that didn't cost her a ton of money, but also got a bunch of stuff out of her house and then had this like retro feel. For example, I have a best friend who has a love of records, and so I'm gifting her some of these old records that don't cost a lot of money, but they're retro and cool. And something I'm doing for my in-laws is we're going to help them reorganize all of their photos, those photos that have been sitting in boxes for years, and we're going to put them into albums for them. Those are all low-cost ideas that are nice, that are meaningful, and that are kind of trendy right now.
I always knew that puka shell necklace would come in handy. Look, what about credit cards? During the holidays, everybody loves throwing things on credit cards. What's the tip there?
Okay, so I call it the holiday hangover, which is not the eggnog. It's you spending all this money on credit cards and they're like, I'll just deal with it in January. I am begging all of y'all, do not let that creep up on you in January. Look at paying off your credit card weekly. So between now and the end of the year, we've got like 6 weeks left. Go and look at your credit card balance at the end of every week, maybe on your Friday afternoon, and pay it off. If you've already had a balance, then try to keep it to not let it go over more. And so I'm telling people that is that if you are conscious of what you're spending on a weekly basis instead of waiting until the holiday is over, you're more likely to spend less.
And finally, look, planning is key. At the end of the day, we have to focus on this holiday season, but how can we plan for the future to make it easier for us?
So you know that saying when people say, fool me once, shame on me, on you, right? Fool me twice, shame on me, right? Like if you end up overspending this holiday season, you know what? No shade, no shame. But we do it again next year. No, that's on us, right?
Yes, it is.
So what I'm telling people is that even though you're already planning for the holidays now, start planning for next year. So if you put $50 away starting in December, by next November, you'll have $600. If you decide to do $100 starting now, next year you'll have $1,200 and your goal, not your budget, will be bigger next year.
That's right. Bonus tip, I love to spread out gift buying. That's my favorite. That's my favorite. Bernadette, I want to put the information up on the screen so people know how to find you, not just your website, but also your Instagram. You give such great tips. Crush Your Money Goals. There's the book right there. And Bernadette, thank you so much for joining us here and giving us some great tips, because we do want to love on our loved ones, but we also want to be smart about it. Thanks again.
Thanks for having me.